Hey everyone, so this next flow requires a little more explanation beforehand. So this time we're going to introduce some arm balances and a little bit of inversion play and just kind of see how we can work that into a flow. So this is not necessarily really focusing on the arm balances specifically or on the inversion specifically, but just on how to kind of take that type of movement and work it into a sequence. So something that you can kind of work in and practice how to flow with it too, because it's a different type of challenge. So I want to briefly kind of go over what the arm balances would look like and the different options if you don't want to do arm balances or if you're working towards them, which they're very challenging, so it's really, I want this to be about making this a practice and not trying to get to that end point right away. So I really encourage taking these different variations, especially in the beginning, even if you do have arm balances in your practice. So first, let's just talk about what the sequence of arm balances is. So the first one in this video that we practice is crow pose. And this one I demonstrate in the actual flow that will follow this video, jumping back from crow pose into chaturanga. And that can be a really tough transition to work with. And it's something that I also really encourage you to exercise with caution, right? Because we really want to be sure that we're being conscious with the shoulders of how we land and kind of work into that. So really take this step by step. Please do not force anything that's not feeling right. So let's start with crow pose, and this may or may not be in your practice, so keep that in mind too. You do not have to know how to do crow pose to work into this. So a few different versions. First, the version that I show is here into crow pose, and then holding for a few breaths and jumping back, landing here with elbows bent, and then coming through the chaturanga here. This is the variation that I usually like to take. So if you're working on crow and you don't have the arm balance in your practice quite yet, start with this lower version. Take your feet wider, turn the toes out like a little yogi squat. You can be on the toes here, knees pretty wide. Create the shelf with your arms. So this is essential for all arm balances. Elbows in, hands down, arms are bent like a shelf. So come into that, see if you can wiggle your inner thighs above your elbows, shift your weight forward as if you were going to balance on your hands. You don't actually have to, but kind of practice that. Then keep one foot, so I'll say left leg stays the same. Step the other leg back, try to keep your elbows bent, and then step both, try to keep the elbows bent. And that's really hard, it's harder than it seems. So practice that, see how you can kind of work with it, and use that as a way to build strength. If you do have crow pose in your practice, then you can kind of practice, and it takes a little bit of a leap of faith to actually do the full jump back. So you can also try the step back, but from a full crow pose, the stepping one leg at a time back is actually going to be a little bit more challenging. So if you're feeling pretty comfortable in crow, and you have your knees up here towards the shoulders or towards the armpits, then see if you can pull your legs back and pull your chest forward at the same time. So it's kind of a counteracting force. Your upper body is shifting forward, lower body is shifting back. Number one thing to avoid here is landing like this. So please make sure that you can draw the shoulders back and maybe take a video if you're unsure of what that feels like and kind of see where your form's at with that. So a few ways to kind of go through that. You can also just eliminate that part entirely and do your chaturanga how you usually do. So it's totally fine. Take the version that works for you and see what you can do to work up to the next step. This next one gets a little bit trickier. So we've practiced a few times coming from downward dog, lifting a leg and taking the knee either across the body or out to the side or both. So coming from here, taking it across, here, taking it out to the side. So for this flow, we're going to practice taking both of those movements into arm balances, which gets tough pretty quickly. So there are different ways, kind of layers to add on. The first thing you can try to practice is actually drawing the knee all the way towards the arm and trying to make contact, seeing if you can get it above the elbow. So that's the first thing. Come from downward dog, and we start with the leg across the body. So here, take the knee across, see if you can get your knee to contact your arm and get above your elbow. And then same thing with the knee out to the side, above here, as high as possible. So start with that. If that feels really far away, work on that. If you want to add on a little more, once you get your knee onto your arm, try a push-up. So a little tiny push-up coming from here, knee out to the side, little push-up. Here, that was a cross, knee out to the side, little push-up, and then come back. Third option is arm balance. So just as a reminder, when we're working on arm balance, is you're creating a shelf with your arms. So elbows are bent and they're also drawn in. If you're taking the knee across the body, this one is a lot harder. So just keep that in mind too. If you want to go into the arm balance with the knee across the body, your shelf will be here, triceps above your elbows, onto the outer edge of whichever leg is moving. So if the right knee is going across, create your shelf here. That's what it's going to look like from the ground perspective. So if this is working for you, lift up, take the knee across, get the knee on here, bend both elbows, create your shelf, shift forward, lift your back leg, maybe extend, and then press out of it, which is also a tough part of that. If that one's, again, harder and it requires a little bit more mobility with a twist, so decide whether it works for you or not. With the knee out to the side, the shelf is a little bit different and it gets a little weird with the opposite elbow. So if I'm moving with my right leg, the right inner thigh is going to come onto my right tricep. My left elbow, especially when in the beginning, will actually hook onto my left hip bone. So that means the elbows have to be pretty kind of squeezed in towards each other. And it's a little bit weird, but as you're going through it and trying this out, think about trying to use both of your elbows to prop your torso up. And it might make sense as you go through it a little bit more, but this is coming from here, knee out to the side, bend both elbows, shift, and really actively lift the back leg, and then see if you can extend this front leg straight. In the video, I demonstrate this transition here with the elbows staying bent and the leg out to the side. If it's all feeling comfortable, try it out. Otherwise, you can just press right back up. Both of them are pretty tough, honestly, so you can kind of just see which one's feeling better for you. From this position, we'll take one leg forward. So whenever you're doing that transition of stepping the foot forward, really try to keep your hands down. And this is where we play around with a little bit of a handstand hop, but it doesn't have to be anything extreme. I'm just kind of encouraging this little shift of weight, seeing if you can get your weight onto your hands and pick up the foot just briefly. Okay, so from here, shift your weight into your hands, come into a standing split. Now, this is a really great exercise for strengthening and lengthening your hamstrings. So you can hang out here for a few breaths or kind of even just take this instead. If you want to practice the weight shift, shift your weight onto your hands, lift up the back heel, scoot this back foot or this bottom foot back so you have a little more leverage, and then bring all of the weight back onto your hands. So you want to get all of the weight shifted forward onto your hands first. Then see if you can just bend the knee and kick your hip towards your heels. So just a little bit of a lift here. Shift forward, little bend, and then land in a lunge. So the idea is landing in a lunge. If you do want to take it into more of a handstand, if you have that in your practice, if you want to play with that, I encourage that too. Whew. So that's kind of the breakdown. Again, lots of different ways to practice it. Remember, this is working towards these exercises, not necessarily trying to hit any end goals. Now follow along with the next video and you can kind of see where you want to take it, practice it a few times, and practice it in your own way. Begin standing, reach your arms up on an inhale, exhale, come into a fold, and begin to move into your crow pose. Take your time, and on the exhale, jump back, step back, however you want to do your chaturanga, your vinyasa. On your exhale, come back into downward dog. Inhale, reach your right leg up. Exhale, take the knee across your body. Maybe come into the arm balance or your variation. Inhale, reach your leg back up. Exhale, knee out to the side. Come into arm balance, push up however you want, and transition into your chaturanga, or you can skip it entirely. Exhale for downward dog, then inhale, reach your right leg up. Exhale, step the foot forward. Begin to shift your weight forward, lift the back leg, maybe add a jump or a little kick, and land in a crescent lunge with right leg forward, left leg back. On the exhale, take your hands down, maybe float your right leg, Go through your chaturanga, your vinyasa. Take the version that works well for you. Take a breath. Inhale, reach the left leg up. Exhale, knee across the body, maybe arm balance. Inhale, come back to three-legged dog. Lift the left leg up. On the exhale, knee to elbow, maybe arm balance. Maybe transition the way that I demonstrate, or you can press back up into your downward dog or three-legged dog. On the exhale, left foot forward, begin to shift the weight towards your hands. Add a little kick, and then inhale, return back to your crescent lunge. On your exhale, hands down. Again, maybe float the left leg, it's optional. Lower on the exhale, inhale for your back bend if you're taking this, and exhale, return to downward dog. Take at least 5 breaths here when you arrive.